On stage. Hi, Jasmia. So I was just talking about how you focus on post-production and how to reduce bias, and you can introduce yourself and get started. And sorry, you had to wait for this long to get the audio fixed.
No problem at all. Thank you so much. Yeah, so hello everybody. I am Jamzia Henry. I'm being patched in from Washington, D.C. Pretty excited to be here. I actually went to Tulane University in New Orleans, not too far from the convention center. So pretty excited to be in New Orleans in spirit, I guess, by way of this Zoom, and also pretty excited to be presenting for everybody today. So as already mentioned, I do a lot of focus on not only bias mitigation and natural language processing and natural language processing models, but specifically like to look in it from a operational standpoint, and really looking at how we can use different components of machine learning operations and post-production monitoring in order to continue that goodness of bias mitigation, even after we have deployed a model, as I like to call it, into the wild. So I'm going to be speaking about that a little bit today. But before I get into it, I'm going to introduce just a little short bit about myself. I am a affiliate fellow at Stanford High, where I was there from about 2021 until now. And currently I work at Microsoft as a senior AI engineer for the Industrial Metaverse Core team, or specifically a team that focuses on how we can do good work using reinforcement learning in order to help with the human computer interaction process for the sake of industry and for manufacturing jobs. So really it's important to me to not only make sure that the models that I build are good models, performant models, but also models that don't perpetuate bias once they have been deployed. So let's get into it. So as you all know, it's absolutely no secret that conversational bots have been having their fair share of bad publicity. And so you can think about many different ones, from Tay all the way to BlenderBot 3, but also, different NLP like transformers that have been used for the sake of building out conversational AI, such as GPT-3, have been shown to have bias towards marginalized groups, and it perpetuates those biases after they've been deployed. So it's very important that when we're thinking about how we want to build good natural language processing models, ones that are representative of multiple different groups, that we also have a holistic approach to combating this bias, not only by, of course, training our models on better data, which is very important and definitely is very work that needs to be done, but also in taking that operational approach, which is thinking about how can we build, train, and deploy our models and continue to monitor them post-deployment. So today I'll be discussing how we can improve our ethical bot building process by taking that operational approach, one that looks past simple data collection, but has an end-to-end focus and looks at what data we're collecting and whether or not it's been properly curated, what models are being built, what model assumptions are being built in to the models that we decide to use and train our data on, and how, of course, we can lean on some really great post-production strategies to mitigate bias in the wild. So let's actually begin by looking at a case study. So considering that I work at Microsoft, and also that I've been very interested in this case for a good bit, I think it'll be important for us to talk about Tay. Tay was a chatbot that was deployed on Twitter back in 2016. And the purpose of Tay was to increase the intelligence and agility of the bot over time by way of conversations with people on the internet. It was trained on publicly accessible data that mainly used the internet as its data source. For those of you who might be familiar, it's specifically one of the data sets used specifically may have been a common crawler, though they haven't released to the public exactly what data sets those were. So within 24 hours of the release of Tay, it went from the how it started to how it ended. It began with this first message that said, the more humans share with me, the more I learn. And it also, pretty much said to humans, hey, pretty excited to be chatting with you today, asking some really sweet and awesome questions. 24 hours later, it was having some questionable anti-Semitic views as well as racist views. Now, anybody at Microsoft, but also anybody in this room could probably see how this could happen, even, it's probably confused actually of how this could happen, even though you trained your model on, data that's nothing like this, right? Because, most people know that this type of language is bad language. And so you don't go and train your model on anti-Semitism or train it on racism. And yet it happened anyway. But the problem with the entire incorporation of Tay is that while it wasn't originally intended to do this type of work, it took with it what Ruha Benjamin called the beauty, ugliness, and cruelty of the world when it was trained on that internet data. And so even though Microsoft wanted to encapsulate that beauty, unfortunately, that ugliness began to be shown through. So how did this happen, right? How can you train a model on good data, deploy it, do some experimentation to make sure that it's good, and it still end up having these problems? Well, problem A is that the training data itself was built on a large and uncurated data set. And that data set was pulled from unverified internet sources. The second problem is that the mathematical assumptions of Tay allow for exploitation to begin to happen. And lastly, there were little to no constraints on what type of interactions that were on the internet should be rewarded and should be replicated by the bot. So, operational thinking, right? By having an operational thinking approach, you have the ability to think multiple steps ahead at the beginning of your model building excursion. So let's take a step back. What is this idea of operational thinking truly? When I say operational thinking, I'm talking about essentially saying, how does the model work? But how does the model work through the framework of production and model deployment? You're focusing on the entire end-to-end process, and you're thinking about it from the ML ops standpoint. How can I make sure that this model is reliable, that the model mitigates risk, but also how can I make sure that it mitigates bias? So how can we apply this thinking to what happened with Tay? First, let's talk about what happened with the uncurated training data. While Microsoft has released a statement claiming that Tay was implemented with a lot of filtering, Microsoft itself has not shared its training data. This is pretty common, though, amongst large language models because, well, a lot of these models, I mean, you're talking about billions of parameters, you're talking about billions and billions and trillions and petaflops, right, of data documentation, of data that's not been documented, unfortunately, because of the sheer size. It's very large. So for those of you who are like, what are you talking about petaflops? What I mean is, I believe petaflops means 1,000 million trillion of float point operations happening per second. So this is a very large endeavor that Tay had to take on in order to be trained. And every bit of that didn't have the ability to be documented. This is pretty common. And, in the paper on the dangers of stochastic parrots by Bender et al., they talk about this as being a form of documentation debt. It's essentially what happens when you have very large language models being trained on large and uncurated data, and it leads to harms such as bias encoding, resource depletion, right? So when you're training on that much data, you're going to be using a bunch of compute, and that compute is going to affect the environment in many ways, because you have to use electricity, you have to use, very large resources. And also, and in a lot of cases, it leads to a lack of accountability. I'm sure many of you probably heard this before, right? Well, we didn't train our model on that type of data. So anything that it begins doing afterwards is really kind of not our fault. Or this other one that you hear a lot, AI and algorithms are unbiased. People are biased. So if the model ends up doing something that's biased, that's not because of us who built the AI, it's because of the people who use the AI, right? And so those types of things become very prevalent when you have these types of situations. But let's also kind of get a little bit into these mathematical assumptions. And I'm not going to get into them too much, but if any of you are interested in taking a deep dive into that, I can send over a paper that I have talking about this case study and talking about those mathematical assumptions. But let's begin kind of doing like a broad strokes case of what we imagine the architecture of a bot like Tay to be like, right? So if it's using any type of reinforcement learning, specifically in the case that it's a conversational bot that is learning as it's going on, that means that there's going to be some type of reward mechanism that you would want for your machine, and you'd want for this machine to be rewarded when it does specific task. So a bot like Tay would probably have reward mechanisms that, well, A, is going to reward the bot for learning in its conversations with human beings. And what do I mean by learning? Well, learning behind the hood would be collecting more data as it's having these conversations, and then using that data to do further training down the line so that it can continue to get smarter. But secondly, you would also want to reward it for engaging in conversations. I mean, the best way to get data is by, well, making sure it collects more data, right? So with these extra conversations, it has the ability to draw out more data so that it can train more, so it can get smarter, so on and so forth. The problem with these types of reward mechanisms is that a bot like Tay has the ability to exploit that by way of gaining, for the purpose of gaining extra reward. So what does that look like? That looks like a model saying, hey, well, I'm having more interactions with people on these types of topics, so I'm going to adapt this type of language to inspire more of these types of topics. And here's where things can get very harmful and very racist very quickly. If it finds that as it's communicating with people on Twitter, communicating with people online, if most of the interactions that it's getting are ones that are very harmful, then deploying that type of language simply makes sense to the model. It's what they call, in Janelle Shane's book, You Look Like a Thing, and I Love You. She calls it exploiting the gap, or as we call it over on the reinforcement learning team at on Bonsai at Microsoft, we call it the real to sim gap, that gap between how you train the model within a confined simulated space and how it behaves now that it's deployed in the wild, in the real world, and interacting with other humans. So what are some strategies that we can deploy in order to stop things like this from happening? So one of the biggest strategies is experimentation. That's something that makes me really excited as a data scientist, right? Because that's a space that a lot of model builders are very comfortable in. Experimentation can be done in multiple ways. Sure, you want to do experimentation pre-deployment, and this can be done by comparing models that have been built and having KPIs, like multiple different models that have been built, and having KPIs that take into account ethical decision making. Maybe you might have some type of ethical score, and so I'm going to promote the model that has the highest ethical score. But you can also do that post deployment by way of different deployment strategies. So here are a few of them. One of them that you can do is, using canary deployment. So canary deployment essentially comes from that idea of, the canary in the coal mine, right? You send a canary down a coal mine. If the canary comes back, then it's safe for the miners to be able to enter that coal mine. If the canary does not come back, then there are some gases there that, are harmful. And so the people do not enter. You can do a very similar thing in deployment where you say, I'm going to send out my model to a small group of people, and I'm going to see how they interact with the model over time. And then from there, I'm going to make adjustments to my model post-deployment so that harms are mitigated and that they're not perpetuated downstream. Another type of deployment that can be used is blue-green deployment. And this is one that I think is very important when we're talking about using models that are, more bleeding edge, if you will, that use deep learning, reinforcement learning, these types of mechanisms that can be very expensive if they do. And when I say expensive, I mean computationally, I mean financially, I mean with the amount of risk that it poses for marginalized groups if they're done incorrectly. And so blue-green deployment can mean you deploying some type of hard-coded solution or more simple solution. The more simple solution could be anything from your logistic or linear regression models. It can be if it's something a little bit more advanced than that. Let's say you want to use some type of more simplified seek model maybe that you have a better understanding or grasp of that your team has worked with before. And then you want to deploy that more bleeding edge model alongside it. With varying percentages of how many people you want to be able to, take advantage of it. This can be a type of, essentially think of it as benchmarking post-deployment. You say, I'm going to, deploy these two. I'm going to see which one gains more traction, but also I'm going to have rollbacks if necessary. And rollbacks are essentially, I'm going to take this bleeding edge model if it's doing harms, and I'm going to remove it or slowly pull it back as I send something else in its place so that it doesn't continue perpetuating harms downstream. And then lastly, what you want to do is be able to add some constraints. So what are these constraints? What do they look like? And this is, something that is largely, all of this is largely, new in this space. But this, mechanism right here is definitely on the space of being more theoretical. And we're still trying to see, how it would actually work long term for multiple different cases. But it's still a very important thing to consider. These constraints, there are three main ones that come to mind that I think are very important. So the first one is the flagging constraint. Flagging constraints are functions that can return a flag every time a rule is breached. So this can be as simple as, returning maybe true on the back end every time a word from a banned list is introduced into the model's lexicon. And it can also be as complex as an incorporation of multiple for loops and while statements to filter out certain words as they show up. Another thing that you can do is pruning. So essentially think of your model as a rose and the bias as its thorns. You want to care for your rose and you want it to continue to grow. That means you would have to do a process called pruning. So it's able to be healthy. So you do that by removing its thorns. Right? So a pruning constraint is what happens when you remove bias instances completely from the model. So essentially you say, oh, this word is not one that we want to introduce into our lexicon, get rid of it, right? And also you can even go to the point of, especially when you have word embeddings, and those word embeddings are mapping to other words linearly during the linear transformation process. You can even go to the point of saying, these words are incorrectly or having a bias mapping towards words that are harmful. So we want to remove those associations. You can do that with flagging, or that can be done a completely separate function. And then lastly, you want to have those nudging constraints, right? So these nudging constraints allow for you to replace harmful words with other words, and also allows for you to ignore bad words, right? So you can say, hey, model, you can take these words into account, but you're going to ignore them, and you're not going to get any reward if your AI, if you decide to use them. Or even you can say, we're going to give you a negative reward for their use. And I'm sure that there's probably some reinforcement learning people in there that's cringing, negative rewards. Well, in some cases, negative rewards can be beneficial. But of course, ignoring words and not giving them any type of reward is way more powerful, because it means that your model is not optimizing for that. You can also add in another component, which is allowing for humans to be in the loop by way of a process called human in the loop modeling. So you can essentially kick back certain words that might have been flagged, that might have been considered harmful, and allow for a human to be able to, give context to the model on those types of words, or even be able to decide whether or not it wants to do some type of pruning mechanism altogether. So this is also what I call the yes and constraint, because with nudging, you have the ability to say, okay, yes, these are harmful words, and we are going to, either ignore them or kick them back to a human, or replace them for the sake of, encouraging proper behavior. So there are many ways that you have the ability to improve those operational processes to mitigate bias during production. And it's my hope that this short primer will excite folks enough to not only learn more about it, but be able to explore different ways that it can use operational thinking to improve your bot building process.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jasmia. This was amazing, amazing. I think you can give us a whole hour just on the constraints out there, like the constraint strategies out there. This is so brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Hope you can stay on for a little bit longer on Zoom. Thank you so much. I don't know if you can hear us clapping from the room.
So much.
Thank you so much. I want to introduce one minute of three of our authors. Ricardo is right here. I started talking to him not knowing that he was Ricardo. So he himself can tell you about
poster session. Yeah, I'm happy to share.
Just 1 minute. And
1 minute. I will just be as fast. Hi, I'm Ricardo. I come from Mexico, and we speak Spanish there, as many as you know. We speak Spanish in many places in Latin America, Africa, and in, of course, Spain and some areas of Asia. But we all talk a different kind of Spanish. So my point of interest was to see how a sarcasm model will react to several annotations. If we went to Argentinian annotation, to Mexican annotation, and Venezuelan annotation, compare that to an expert and see how that works. I'm getting my feet wet on the field, so it was a messful experiment, but it was something to learn from and to move forward from that. And if you want to discuss about that, I'm going to be there in Hall J. Hall, yes, to have great conversation with you guys, and online it will be awesome to connect.
Between 4 and 6, right?
Between 4 and 6, almost 6, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get our, thank you. Can we get our Zoom back, because we have 2 people on Zoom? Blessing, I want to see whether we can project you on Zoom. Can we get this? Oh, we see Jasmine. Okay. Switch. You're switching. No, switch to Blessing. No, stop. Oh. I want to see Blessing. Yeah. Our slides.
You want our slides?
No, I want to show Blessing on the screen. So we have Blessing who is joining us from Canada, I believe. Suddenly we have like so many people from Canada or so many people from Latin America. It happens that way, you know. Are we able to see? We are able to see a Blessing on our Zoom here, but not on the projection. Is it possible? Us. We are able to see
Yes,
Jasmia.
I can hear you.
Yes,
I don't know
hello. Do you want to introduce
Hello.
yourself, and then I will show your poster as you requested,
Okay.
and you can talk to it. One minute.
Okay,
1 minute
so,
intro, 1 minute poster. Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Blessing Ogbuokiri. I'm originally from Nigeria, but I am based in Canada, Toronto, to be precise. I am at York University in Toronto, a postdoc. Can you hear me, actually?
We can hear you, but
Am I-
volume is low. We're trying to get it up.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, should I?
Yeah, it's
continue?
better. Yes.
Better. Okay. So once again, I said my name is Blessing, and I am a postdoc at York University in Toronto. So I'm basically into machine learning for health, and we also try to use what people say to be able to make sense of it from social media and try to merge it with vaccination data to see how we can actually find out areas where you have vaccine hesitancy. So it's, I thank Sudha for inviting me, and it's an awesome experience. I couldn't make it in person, but I hope that definitely we'll have some good time in the future.
Thank you so much. Can we show our slide? Is it possible to yeah. Yeah. Can we switch? Oh, you can share our screen. Is Muskan there? Then we can project her next. We can share.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Muskan. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your poster also?
Hi, yes, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I am Muskan Mahajan. I'm a recent high school graduate from India, and I'm a student researcher. And I'm so grateful to the Global Southern AI Workshop, as it has allowed me to build on my work with Bella, bot for English language acquisition, a language learning chatbot that is created for a largely Hindi and English being code switched Hindi and English population. My main motivation behind creating this chatbot is the growing importance of English fluency in India, owing to it governing people's employment prospects and to a certain extent their social acceptance. I am very excited to meet you all on December 5th as I present on my poster and elaborate more on my project. See you all there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Muskan. I didn't know she was a high school student. It's just very inspiring. And English, as it's called, right? One of the things people were asking us, they said, you're talking about global South languages and saying, the rest of language AI is English centered. So are you like against English? And English is what is the language by which coding is done, and a lot of translations are being done today. We just want to add diversity. And then one of the fascinating things I found in our search trying to reach various different languages beyond what we knew was there were variation of English. For whatever bad reason, English got adopted by many countries. Today, it has its own base and used by people. So people are not waiting and saying, I like this language or not done like this language. It's their mother tongue and they speak or whatever reason. And so there's a flavor of it, right? So the Indian English that I was taught was different when I came to US. I've been in US for 30 years, so kind of my language is morphed into something else. So there is this language Muskan is talking about is called Hinglish, which is a combination of Hindi and English. So they speak Hindi, but they type it using English. and it's 350 million people speak that language or use that language. So it's a decent population. Similarly, there's Singlish from Singapore, and there's more variations too. In fact, I know of research that's done from Africa to get specific African accents of English to be understood by the bots. So I don't know if Alexa will understand Nigerian accent first or my accent first. Let's see. So I want to actually project Blessing's poster because he was talking and I kind of switched to Muskan. So if I am able to get the slide showing up, I would like to show you Blessing's poster. So Ricardo, who spoke about the Spanish model, is going to be live at the poster session. We're going to start sprinting right after you guys, clap for us last round. We are going to start sprinting. So you'll see me, Susanna, and Ricardo at our session live, and one of our other high schooler who was also a program chair with us. She will be joining us a little late. Her plane is coming in later. So you'll see us. Rest of the other poster sessions are going to be on the 5th on virtual. So I hope you will catch that. There's going to be 12 posters. We also want to thank F5, who's the only company who sponsored us and funded us a little bit. We got some snacks thanks to F5. Susanna, we need to give them the snacks. So I want to make sure you take the snacks because we brought it and we lugged it in a big suitcase. And so we want you to take them, please. And we are very thankful for F5 for helping us out. Being a new group and explaining to everybody was hard, and we don't know the sales game. So we're very thankful for everybody who believed, everybody who showed up. Blessings thing. Okay. So this is Blessing's poster, and I'm specifically showing Blessing's poster because Blessing was almost going to be here, and then the visa situation got backlogged, and he's in Canada, but he had to go to get a visa. It is a complicated game. So we are hoping that by next year we will work with NeurIPS, and I have a lot of suggestions on how we can get everybody their visa, everybody to be here and make this truly diverse event. So that's my hope. What else? Is there anybody else who has any questions or comments from what you've heard and seen today? You came in expecting something, and then we gave you something, and a little bit chaotic with me coming in late in the middle. So I'm just wondering, is there any comments, observations you want to share? And no pressure if you don't want to. Yes. Sorry, do you want to come here? Would you mind?
In our research, we focus a lot in accountability. Yes. Because people are programming, but they are human beings. So the social aspects that are prejudicial in our society are being applied on the logic part of programming. So how do you have already some research in that area? How do you see accountability and the social aspects that there is being introduced, or the biases that are happening on programming? There are any research about that, or researchers that are doing investigation on this aspect?
Thank you for the question. So I just want to repeat the question. Thank you so much. So I want to repeat the question. The question was, in their research, they focus on accountability. And so they want to know, is there research on accountability specifically focused on social aspect and reducing bias in AI ethics? So specifically, I cannot say for language AI that I've seen accountability related research at all. But when we think about, one of the things I do outside of Stanford is I teach AI ethics and responsible AI at Barcelona Technology School. And one of the there are many frameworks for AI ethics, and a lot of them focus on fairness and explainability. Very few of them focus on accountability. But when you look at what is the framework of AI ethics, you will see 6 buckets, and you will see, ethical human-centered design, and you will see accountability in there. So and there are people who are working on it. So the best thing that comes to top of mind, since I'm live and you asked this question and I want to give you an answer before you go, is there is a group called Women in AI Ethics, and they have a directory of amazing women who are working on every aspect of AI ethics from around the world. And this is like, they are not leaving any nook and cranny of the world. So if you find Women in AI Ethics, and it's like an acronym, I can do that, Women in AI Ethics. So it's the WAIE, thank you, Susanna. So if you Google that, and they have a directory, and you can see on the left which country, and you can filter by that, or which region, you can filter by that, and then you can say which of the 6 AI ethics principle, and if you select responsible AI, or not responsible AI, accountability is what she's asking. So if you select accountability, then you will see everybody in the world who's working on accountability, or everybody in Brazil who are working on accountability, and you will see those women and link to them and their LinkedIn and Twitter, and some of them are researchers, some of them are practitioners, but also a lot of people are working on accountability from a corporate perspective. So they might not have published open research, but they might be doing that for Accenture or FI or some particular company. So that's another dimension. Okay, I'm glad you're happy. Yes.
So it's interesting that Lee brought this question, because she's currently working on something called, we have model cards for the models. They have all the information. So she's working on something that it's a corporate card.
Yeah.
That should, or maybe, I guess we can make regulations though, so they can have all the information that the entrepreneurs should know about their model,
Yeah.
or their application, or what they can, or the bias, or who's responsible, who should be asked for. So she's working on something like that, right? And we also have a paper which is called Worldwide AI Ethics, which is over 200 guidelines on normativity. So it's
What is the paper called?
Worldwide AI Ethics.
Worldwide AI Ethics?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's over 200 normatives and guidelines.
And it's available, or your
Yeah, it's on our side.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
We'll give you the.
That's awesome. I'm happy to share that back. I'm sure we'll be tweeting, and we have a LinkedIn group called Global South in AI. For those of you who are watching live, or come back and watch this, and join us on LinkedIn. Stop by at our poster session if you're here, please, and join us on Global South in AI on LinkedIn. We have a group. So at least through that, we'll be able to collect, and at least all the resources that we're seeing here, we'll be able to share that. That's our hope, right? And my plan is, between me and Susanna, we are going to post on Arziv all our different posters and researchers, and a summary of our work from today. So hopefully you'll be able to connect with everybody. And one of my pet peeves with doing anything live is, you hear Bonaventure Dosso, and it's brilliant. If you do not spell his name right, you miss out on an amazing opportunity that you will regret, I can tell you. So I'm very big on pronouncing people's name right and getting spellings right. So I will make everything I can do to make sure that, I'll tweet about this, I'll put this on Arziv, I'll put this on our LinkedIn group, and even my name is Sudha Jamthe, and then J is not silent. And so, you're going to think it's silent. Definitely, you're going to think it is silent. So I have to go about, saying, it's not silent. I'm Sudha Jamthe, even to my Mexican friends in California. So should we wrap up? Have we missed anything? Oh, yeah, we are able to show blessings poster. Oh, that'll be awesome. Thank you so much. And I've troubled you so much today. Thank you so much to Honda, and I don't know your name, for our work. Yes. Yes. Blessing, if you're still around, you want to talk to the poster session, and then people can come and hear all the detail back on December 5th at the virtual poster session. No, I don't know if Blessing can hear us. Blessing, we are just showing we just showed your poster. We want to show his poster. Yeah, we just showed your poster. Do you want to tell us anything about it, or
Yes. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Interesting. Can I have the poster on again? I can't see the poster. I'm seeing you right now.
Okay. Can we show the poster back and allow Blessing to talk, or if he talks, Blessing, if you talk, the poster doesn't show. We just see you. So we can hear you.
Fine. I can talk. Okay, so basically what we are doing is we are trying to inform policy with what people are talking on social media. Because right now, a lot of things are happening since after the COVID, and there's a lot of vaccine hesitance, especially in Africa, and a lot of some other countries that are not well informed about the vaccination and all that. So what we do is we get data from social media, especially Twitter, what people are talking, when they post from the comfort of their homes, maybe someone took a jab and is getting some side effects, is posting it, is also using that to discourage people from taking a particular vaccine because of the side effect on his body, which actually might not really be true. And sometimes there is this rumor that actually, go on in Africa, people are, told not to take the vaccine and all that. So what we did using Nigeria as a case study was basically to, scrape Twitter data that actually discussed vaccines and vaccination within Nigeria, and get especially the Jotact tweets. Then we try to analyze them, label them according to their sentiments. We labeled with pre-trained models, labeled manually also. We also consider the fact that there are some Pidgin English, there are some native tongues like Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba that people actually sometimes they concatenate when they are typing or posting something. So we considered all that. We're able to label this tweet according to the Jotact. Then we also try to train the model to visualize it, in a way that it can actually help to inform policy, that policymakers can now see the places. When you see the poster, you see there's a map. We're using Nigerian map to actually also visualize the data in terms of the sentiment of the tweets. When people are, the cluster of people who are, posting negative things about the tweet, or positive things about the tweets, or those who are neutral, we use colors to differentiate them on a point basis. So with that, you can see the cluster of people who are now against taking the vaccine. So with that cluster of people, we actually interface it with the vaccination data with the policymakers to check if actually people in that area are actually taking this vaccine or not. If they are not taking the vaccine, then the policymakers can have a plan on ground to know how to sensitize people in that area to be able to take the vaccine. So basically, that's what our work is all about in this project, and that's what we're using the language to do in this area.
So as you can see, one of the things we are trying to do is, yes, thank you. So one of the things we try to do is, when we hear, talk about global languages and adding this, anybody can be skeptical and say this is all great, but they are low resource languages, they don't have enough data sets. So where do we get started? So what we decided to do was, instead of saying, okay, these languages don't have, and let's start building the data set, which is a long multi-year exercise, we said, what if we invite people to solve for problems that's important for their local area in their language? So Blessing's presentation is very important to me because he's building a data set for Nigerian language for a topic that's very important to them. So finally, the purpose of AI is not just general purpose. Here is an API, because with an API, we're expected to build something to solve for the world, right? For us. And so that is how we are approaching this, saying, let's solve for local problems and let local people come and say, what are their problems? And then automatically the data set comes with it. So that's the thinking. And Blessing, as I'm talking, I was told that when I talk, the slides can show, so we are showing your poster. So Blessings and everybody else poster will be on December 5th at the virtual. So we were talking. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. So as we said, all our different posters, they went through a